I had just been discharged from the hospital after a heart attack when my daughter Sarah called. It was late, around midnight. The phone rang, its shrill sound breaking the silence of my hospital room. I reached for it weakly, still hooked up to IN4, the beeping of the heart monitor echoing in the background. "Dad, it's me." Sarah's voice came through the receiver, not the warm tone I remembered, but something distant and almost cold. I felt a tightness in my chest that had nothing to do with the heart attack. "Sarah? What's wrong?" "It's late," I said, my voice trembling with concern. "I'm getting married tomorrow," she said flatly. I blinked, unable to fully comprehend what I was hearing. "Tomorrow? Sarah, you've never mentioned anything about this. What's going on?" "We decided not to wait," she replied. "Leo and I are getting married. The apartment and the car are sold. The money is going toward the wedding and the honeymoon." Her words were a blow to my already fragile heart. The apartment I had bought for her, the one I had invested in with everything I had to give her a future, sold. The car I had gifted her for graduation, gone. "But honey, the apartment. I bought it for you," I protested. "Why would you sell it?" "It's done, Dad," she cut in, her voice even more detached. "I'm 30, I can make my own decisions. Leo says you've been too controlling." I froze, the words striking a deeper wound than any heart attack could. "Leo?" I repeated, my voice shaky. "He's the one telling you this?" "Yes, Leo thinks it's time I became independent," she said, each word sharp and final, a clear dismissal of everything we built together. I struggled to sit up, feeling the weight of this betrayal heavier than the illness that had nearly taken my life. My heart monitor beat faster, reflecting the sudden change in my emotions. "But Sarah, please, we need to talk about this. We can work this out. You've always been my priority. We've been through so much, and now—" "I need to do this for me, Dad," Sarah interrupted. "I can't keep living in your shadow, relying on you. I'm sorry about your heart, but I can't let guilt dictate my choices anymore." Her words stung, the sharpness of her dismissal reverberating through me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. 15 years, Sarah," I whispered, feeling the years of sacrifice slip away. 15 years since my wife, Jessica, passed away, leaving me with the promise to take care of our daughter no matter what. And now here I was, losing her to the very person I had trusted her with. "I'm sorry, Dad," Sarah said, her voice now tinged with an edge of finality. "But I have to go. Goodbye." The call ended with a click. I sat there, staring at the small photo of Sarah and Jessica from her graduation, the image of happiness now clouded with confusion. Everything I had given, every sacrifice, had been repaid with cold distance. I had always known she was growing up, but this was more than I had ever anticipated. But then, as the hospital room seemed to swallow me whole, I realized something. This was far from over. My mind, accustomed to navigating complex legal matters and strategies, was already shifting gears. There was more to this than what Sarah and Leo had planned. I had been an attorney for 40 years, and I could see the strings being pulled, the manipulation that had taken place. One thing was clear: I wasn't going to let my daughter be taken advantage of. The laughter that followed our last dinner together echoed in my memory, how I told Sarah that her mother would have been so proud of her, and how I was proud to see her so happy. That had been 3 years ago. Since then, something had shifted. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of years of sacrifice pressing down on me, but a small, almost imperceptible smile tugged at the corners of my lips. They'd underestimated me. They didn't know who they were dealing with. The next morning, I woke up with a strange clarity. The hospital room was gone, replaced by the comfort of my own home in the quiet suburbs of Seattle. The sun was just beginning to peek through the blinds, casting a soft light over the furniture I had carefully chosen for Sarah over the years. As I sat at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee, I couldn't help but replay the events of last night in my mind. Sarah's voice had been so cold, so distant. There had to be more to it. Leo was clearly at the heart of this, but how could he have gotten to her like this? How could he have convinced my daughter to throw everything away? I didn't have all the answers, but I knew one thing for sure: Leo was no good for Sarah. I'd seen men like him before, smooth, charming, but ultimately after something they didn't deserve. And now, he had my daughter wrapped around his finger. I had spent 30 years as an attorney, building a reputation on knowing how to read people, how to see through their lies. It was time to use that skill again. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. Tom? It's John Hart. I need a favor. Tom Miller had been my partner for over 2 decades, a brilliant investigator with a knack for uncovering the hidden truths people thought they could keep secret. If anyone could find out what Leo was really up to, it was Tom. You've got it, John. Tom's voice came through the line, reassuring. Give me 48 hours, and I'll have everything on him. Financials, background checks, connections, nothing will be left to chance. I leaned back in my chair, thinking about the phone call from Sarah last night. The sadness, the distance in her voice. It was as if she had already chosen her path, one that led her further away from me. But I wasn't going to let her go without a fight. I would do whatever it took to protect her, even if it meant fighting against her. By the time I finished my coffee, I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to just sit back and wait for the inevitable. I had given Sarah everything, and now it was time for me to take action. I would find out everything about Leo Morrison, and if my instincts were right, he would regret ever coming into my daughter's life. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Tom was working tirelessly on Leo's background, and I had spent hours combing through old legal documents, trying to find a way to regain control of the situation. My trust documents, which I had meticulously set up to ensure Sarah's security, seemed to hold the key to stopping Leo's scheme. The apartment had been part of a larger plan I'd set up years ago, a structure that made it impossible for anyone to sell the property without my approval. Sarah had never fully understood the details, but I had hoped she would appreciate it when she was older. Now I realized that I was the one who had to teach her about the real world, about the consequences of blindly trusting the wrong people. Tom called me 2 days later with the results. John, I've got what you need, he said, his voice low and serious. Leo Morrison isn't who he says he is. His business is a cover, and he's got a history of manipulating women, using them for their money. He's been married twice before, and both marriages ended badly. One woman lost everything, including her house, when he convinced her to sell it for a so-called investment opportunity. The other woman filed for a restraining order, but it was dropped. I felt my stomach churn. I had suspected something was off about Leo from the moment I met him, but this confirmed my worst fears. He wasn't just after Sarah's money, he was a conman, a predator who had used his charm to steal from others before. And now, he was trying to do the same with her. We need to stop this, John, Tom continued. If he's already talking about selling her apartment, it's only a matter of time before he takes everything. You need to act fast. I knew Tom was right. I had already been too passive. Leo had played me, just as he was playing Sarah. I couldn't sit by and watch it happen again. That night, I went over the trust documents once more, making sure everything was in place. I had set it up so that Sarah was the beneficiary of the property, but I was the trustee. It was a legal loophole that Leo couldn't have known about. The next morning, I called Sarah. She answered on the first ring, her voice wary. Dad, what do you want? I need to talk to you, Sarah, I said firmly. We need to meet in person. I don't think that's a good idea, she replied, her voice colder than ever. Leo and I are fine. No, you're not, I said, feeling a rush of determination. He's not the man you think he is. He's using you, Sarah. And you're about to lose everything. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear her struggling with what I had just said. Finally, she spoke. I don't want to talk about this, Dad. You're just trying to control me. Please, just let me be happy. I can't let you be happy at the expense of your future, I said quietly. I've already lost your mother. I'm not going to lose you too. She didn't respond. The line went dead, and I sat back in my chair, staring at the phone. But this wasn't over. I wouldn't let it be. I didn't have to wait long for the next call. 2 days later, Sarah reached out to me. "Dad, we need to talk," she said, her voice no longer defensive but tinged with uncertainty. I felt a flicker of hope. It was time to set things straight. 2 days later, Sarah and I sat across from each other at our usual spot, a small cafe in the center of Seattle. The place where we had shared countless meals and milestones over the years. It was almost fitting that we would meet here, under the soft hum of the cafe's usual bustle, where I had always tried to protect her from the world. Now, it felt like I was trying to protect her from herself. She had come alone, no sign of Leo trailing behind her, which was unusual. I hadn't seen him in days, and something told me that he was now realizing the walls were closing in. Still, Sarah walked in like she had the weight of the world on her shoulders. Her once bright and eager face was now drawn with exhaustion, her eyes distant. It reminded me too much of Jessica, the same signs of a person who had been worn down by something, someone. "I'm glad you agreed to meet, Sarah," I said, my voice calm, though every muscle in my body was tense. She stared down at her coffee cup, swirling the contents absently. "I don't know what's happening anymore, Dad. You're saying things about Leo that don't match the man I know. I can't just turn my back on him." "I don't want you to turn your back on him, sweetheart," I said gently, though the weight of what I knew loomed over us. "I want you to see him for who he really is. Leo isn't who he says he is. I've done my homework. He's been married before, twice. Both of those women lost everything, money, property, their futures. Leo uses women like a stepping stone." Sarah's eyes flashed, a flicker of disbelief. "You don't know him like I do." "Maybe not, but I know how to read people, Sarah," I said, my tone firm. "I've been doing it for decades. And I know a con when I see one." She shook her head, a bitter smile crossing her face. "And you think I don't know what's good for me? You think you can just make all my decisions like you always have?" "No," I said, leaning in, trying to meet her eyes. "I've always tried to let you make your own decisions. But I've also protected you. That's what parents do, Sarah. We protect our children from mistakes, even the ones they don't know they're making." The words hit harder than I expected. For a moment, her defenses dropped, and I saw the young girl I used to know, the one who would look to me for advice, for guidance. That was the daughter I had hoped I could still reach. But it was fleeting. The wall went back up. "I've made up my mind, Dad. Leo and I are married. There's nothing you can do about it." I swallowed, my chest tightening. She was already so far gone, and I couldn't help but feel responsible. I had let things go too far. I had let her grow into this adult who believed in someone who was capable of such betrayal. "You think I don't understand how it feels?" I asked, my voice rough. "I'm not trying to control you, Sarah. I'm trying to help you. Leo has been after your inheritance since the moment he met you. The apartment you sold? It was part of his plan. I'm not the one who's controlling you, he is. And you're walking right into it." Her face hardened, and I could see the anger building in her. "I don't want to hear this. You're the one who's always been controlling. First, it was Mom's illness, and then it was me. Everything has always been about you, your work, your rules. Well, not anymore, Dad. Not with Leo. We're happy. I'm happy." Her words stung. It was like she was blaming me for everything that had happened. For years I had been her rock, and now she was turning on me. But I couldn't let her go down this path. I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "If you're happy, Sarah, why is Leo's name always coming up in every decision you make? Why is it that when you talk about your future, it's always about him, not you?" She didn't respond, her lips pressed tightly together. That silence was enough of an answer. I knew this was the moment. If I didn't act now, it might be too late. "Listen, Sarah. I've already contacted my lawyer. There are legal protections in place that you don't know about. I set up the apartment in a trust to protect you. You can't just sell it without my approval. Leo doesn't have the power to take that from you. And if he's been pressuring you to sell your future for a quick wedding, I'm going to stop him." Her face strained of color as she processed what I had said. "What are you talking about? You set up a trust?" "Sarah," I said, my voice softer now. "You never understood why I had all those legal documents prepared, but I did it because I wanted you to be safe. I wanted you to be protected. And Leo's not part of that protection." She stared at me, the realization slowly dawning in her eyes. For a moment, she looked unsure, as though she was finally starting to see the cracks in the story Leo had told her. "I didn't know, Dad," she said quietly. "I thought I was doing what was right. I didn't realize how much I was being manipulated." I sighed, relief flooding through me, but it was short-lived. I knew that what came next would be the hardest part. "You have to stop, Sarah," I said, looking her squarely in the eye. "You have to see Leo for who he really is. He's already taken everything from you, your trust, your independence. The only thing he hasn't taken yet is your future." As the conversation ended, I knew Sarah wasn't fully convinced. But she wasn't walking away completely either. Maybe this was the beginning of something. Maybe I had a chance to pull her back from the edge, but it would take time. Leo wouldn't go down easily, and I couldn't let my guard down for a second. The fight for my daughter's future had only just begun. The days after my conversation with Sarah felt like they were stretching on forever. There was a heaviness that weighed down on me, a constant pressure that made it hard to focus on anything else. I knew I had made some headway, but it wasn't enough. Leo was still out there, still pulling the strings, and I couldn't rest until I had full control of the situation. I spent most of the next morning going over the trust documents, making sure everything was in place. I didn't trust Leo, and I certainly didn't trust the idea of leaving things to chance. If Sarah was going to come around, she needed to see things clearly, and that meant showing her just how deep Leo's manipulation went. That afternoon, I met with Tom again. "John, I've got something for you," Tom said, his voice serious. He handed me a thick file, the kind I knew all too well, a file full of information that could change everything. I opened it carefully, my heart already racing as I flipped through the pages. What I saw made my stomach churn. "Leo Morrison's financial history isn't just messy," Tom continued, sitting across from me. "It's criminal. I traced some of his previous relationships. Both ended badly, like I told you. But there's more. He's been involved in fraudulent activities for years. Real estate scams, embezzlement, and even some allegations of identity theft. The guy is a professional." I stared at the file, stunned by what I was seeing. I had suspected that Leo wasn't who he said he was, but this was worse than I could have imagined. He wasn't just after Sarah's apartment. He was after her entire life, and he was willing to destroy everything in his path to get it. "Are you saying he's been doing this for years?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Tom nodded. "Exactly. And the pattern is always the same. He targets successful women who are vulnerable, emotionally or financially. He builds their trust, makes them believe he's the perfect match, and then he exploits their assets. It's almost a game to him." I clenched my fists, the anger rising inside me. "I'm going to stop him, Tom. Once and for all." Tom gave me a knowing look. "I thought you might say that. But you can't do it alone. We need to bring in some serious backup, people who can help with the legal side of things and ensure he can't slip through the cracks again." I nodded. "I've already contacted a few people. I'm not going to let this man ruin my daughter's future. Not after everything I've done to protect her." The conversation shifted to the next steps, and by the time I left Tom's office, I felt like I was finally getting the pieces of the puzzle in place. I had the financial records, the background check on Leo, and the support I needed to take him down. It was time to confront Sarah with the truth, fully armed with evidence. Later that evening, I drove to Sarah's apartment. I had been pacing all afternoon, the frustration and urgency building inside me. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for. When I arrived, I saw Sarah's car parked outside, but I also noticed something else, Leo's BMW. He was here. My pulse quickened as I made my way up to the front door. I knocked once, hard, before stepping back to wait. A moment later, Sarah opened the door, her face softening as she saw me. "Dad," she said, surprised. "I didn't expect you to come by." "I need to talk to you, Sarah," I said, my voice firm. "Right now? Where's Leo?" "He's in the other room," she said, looking hesitant. "But we're fine, Dad." "Really?" "No, you're not," I replied, stepping past her into the apartment. "You think you're fine, but you're not. You've been manipulated, and it's time you see it." She looked confused, her eyes darting toward the living room where Leo was probably waiting. "I told you, Dad. I don't want to hear this. Leo is good to me. We're building a life together." "No," I said, cutting her off. "You're not building anything. You're being used. And I can prove it." I walked over to the table where I had placed the folder containing all of Leo's fraudulent activities. Sarah watched me, her expression shifting from confusion to disbelief as I opened it and laid the papers out in front of her. "What's this?" she asked, her voice shaking. "It's everything I've found out about Leo," I said calmly. "His financial history, his past relationships, everything he's done to other women. He's been using them, just like he's using you." Sarah's face went pale as she skimmed through the documents. "This can't be real. Leo would never." "Read it, Sarah," I said, my voice quieter now. "The truth is right in front of you." She continued reading, her hands trembling. The silence between us was thick with the weight of what I had just shown her. Leo was no longer the charming, perfect man she had fallen for. He was a predator, a man who had built his life on the backs of women like Sarah, and now she was just another mark in his game. After what felt like an eternity, Sarah looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mix of anger, betrayal, and disbelief. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. I didn't see it. How could I have been so blind?" I stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It's not your fault, Sarah. He's good at what he does. He made you believe in something that wasn't real. But now you know the truth. And you can choose to do something about it." The sound of Leo's footsteps approached from behind us. He was trying to act like nothing was wrong, trying to keep up the facade. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice forced. "I'm done with you, Leo," Sarah said, her voice steady for the first time. "I've seen everything. And I'm not going to let you ruin my life." Leo froze, the smirk falling from his face. "You don't know what you're saying," he sneered. "You're making a mistake." "I'm making the right choice," Sarah replied, her voice firm. "And you're not going to manipulate me anymore." I could see the change in her, the realization that she wasn't the helpless victim Leo had made her believe she was. Leo stepped back, clearly thrown off by her strength. "This isn't over," he muttered. "It is over," Sarah said, her voice stronger than I had ever heard it. "You've lost." I watched as Leo walked out of the apartment, his pride crushed. For the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. My daughter had fought back. She had taken control of her own life. Later that evening, Sarah and I sat together in the quiet of her apartment, the weight of the day finally starting to lift. We didn't talk much, but the silence was comfortable now. She had made the right decision. She had finally seen through Leo's lies, and I couldn't have been prouder of her. "I'm sorry, Dad," Sarah whispered, her eyes wet with unshed tears. "You don't need to apologize, sweetheart," I said, pulling her into a hug. "You've learned the truth. That's all that matters." The following days felt surreal. The apartment was quiet again, no more tension hanging in the air, no more calculated lies from Leo twisting around every conversation. But as much as the calm was a relief, there was a lingering sadness in Sarah's eyes, a shadow of the pain she had gone through without even realizing it. She had trusted Leo, loved him, and believed he was the one who would build a future with her. But the truth had shattered that dream, and it wasn't just her future that was broken. It was the relationship we had built too. The night Leo had walked out of the apartment, I stayed with Sarah until she felt safe enough to sleep. She was exhausted, mentally and emotionally drained. I had no idea what the next steps would be, but I knew one thing for sure: she wasn't going to be alone in this. Not again. The days after the confrontation passed in a blur of paperwork and legalities. I called Tom again, needing advice on how to proceed with Leo. I wanted him as far away from my daughter as possible, and I wasn't going to let him use legal loopholes to drag Sarah into his mess. Tom confirmed what I already suspected: Leo had a history of using the law to protect his own interests, especially when it came to the women he had manipulated. "John, you need to get everything locked down," Tom advised. "The apartment sale you mentioned, it might be void, but it could take some time for the legal ramifications to catch up. You don't want him coming back with a lawyer, making claims that could affect Sarah's future." "Don't worry, I've already started the process," I said. "I'll get the necessary injunctions and ensure that Leo can't touch any of it. I'm not letting him take advantage of Sarah again." And that's exactly what I did. I made sure to contact the necessary people in the legal system, moving quickly to secure everything that had once been hers. As soon as I could, I set up meetings with the property attorney, determined to make sure the apartment would stay within the trust. It wasn't just about the property. It was about making sure Sarah understood that I had her back, that she could rely on me. But as much as I was focused on protecting her future, something told me that Sarah wasn't as focused on the material things anymore. She had been shaken to her core by what she had learned about Leo, and as much as I hated to see her hurt, I could see it was making her stronger. The day after I made all the necessary calls and set up the legal protections, I visited Sarah at her apartment again. I knocked lightly on the door, and when she opened it, I saw her face, still carrying the burden of everything she had just been through, but with a little more resolve than the last time I saw her. "Hey, Dad," she said softly, stepping aside to let me in. "How are you doing?" I asked, my voice sincere. I had to ask, even though I knew the answer wasn't going to be easy. "I'm okay, I guess," Sarah replied, looking away. "I still feel like I can't believe all of it. That I let someone like Leo into my life. I never thought I could be so blind." I shook my head, stepping forward to stand beside her. "Sweetheart, this isn't your fault. Leo's good at what he does. He knew exactly how to play you, how to make you feel like you needed him. And it worked. But that's on him, not you. You're not the one who failed here." She nodded, though the sadness in her eyes still lingered. "I thought I was doing everything right. But now I feel so lost. Like I don't even know what I was working for anymore." "You're working for yourself now," I said firmly. "It's time to put your focus back on you. You've been through a lot, and I won't pretend it's easy. But you're going to come out of this stronger, Sarah. You've already taken the first step, and that's the hardest part." I could see the doubt creeping into her eyes, and I knew it wasn't going to be an instant transformation. But as long as she was willing to fight, I was going to be right there by her side. A week later, Sarah and I sat down to go over the trust documents and the apartment. She had been hesitant to look at it all, unsure of how to process everything that had happened. But after our talk, she agreed to go over the details, and together, we worked through what needed to be done. "Dad," she said, her voice softer now, "I don't know what I would have done without you. I was so convinced Leo was my future, but now I can't even imagine where I'd be if I hadn't found out the truth." I placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone in this, Sarah. You never have been. We're a team, and no one, not even Leo, can come between us." "I know," she whispered, wiping away a tear. "I'm just so sorry I didn't see it sooner. I should have listened to you." "You're going to be okay," I said gently. "It takes time, but you'll be okay. I'll make sure of it." 2 weeks later, I received a call from Sarah. "I'm going to do it, Dad," she said, her voice filled with determination. "I'm going to cancel the wedding. I don't want to be with someone like Leo. I don't want to be with anyone who would lie to me and use me like that." The words brought a smile to my face, though my heart ached for the pain she had endured. She had taken back control, and that was all that mattered. "I'm proud of you, Sarah," I said quietly. "You made the right choice. I didn't just do it for me," she added. "I did it for us, for you and me. I don't want to be the person I was. I want to move forward, with you by my side. I'm here, sweetheart," I said, the emotion catching in my throat. "I'll always be here." It wasn't an easy road, but every step Sarah took was one toward healing, one toward reclaiming her life. She moved out of the apartment that had once been a symbol of Leo's control, and while the process was painful, she started fresh, focused on her career and rebuilding herself. It was slow, but every day felt like a small victory. And I knew, no matter what happened, I would never let her face the world alone again. Weeks passed, and Sarah began to regain some semblance of normalcy. She threw herself into work, spending long hours at her office, and I could see the change in her. She was slowly beginning to rebuild her life, her confidence, her sense of self-worth, and the trust she had lost, not just in Leo, but in herself. But while Sarah worked on healing, the legal battle was just beginning. Leo had not taken the defeat well. Despite everything that had happened, despite the fact that Sarah had seen him for who he truly was, he still tried to assert control over her. It wasn't long before I started receiving phone calls from his lawyer, threatening to sue for damages, claiming that the sale of the apartment was valid, and that Leo was entitled to compensation for the emotional distress Sarah had caused him. I had expected this. I had known Leo wouldn't just walk away quietly. But I wasn't prepared for the lengths to which he would go. His lawyer, Daniel Reeves, had a reputation for being ruthless, always looking for loopholes and ways to manipulate the law. It seemed like everything Leo had done was part of a bigger plan to wear us down, to make us question ourselves and back off. "I need to discuss this with my lawyer," I told Sarah one evening after receiving yet another threatening letter from Leo's attorney. "This is going to get messy. He's not going to give up, and neither will I. I don't want to do this anymore, Dad," Sarah replied, her voice filled with exhaustion. "Can't we just move on? We've already won, right?" I looked at her, my heart aching. "Sweetheart, you've made the right decision. You've chosen yourself over someone who never deserved you. But this isn't just about Leo anymore. This is about making sure he can never hurt anyone else. We have to protect you, Sarah. He'll keep trying to drag us back into his web, but we have to stand firm." She nodded, although the weight of the situation was clearly starting to take its toll on her. This was not the life she had imagined when she first met Leo. It wasn't what any of us had imagined. I called Tom and arranged a meeting with him the next day. The situation was escalating, and I needed all the resources I could muster. We were facing not just a legal fight, but a battle of wills, and I knew I had to be strategic. "John, you're going to need a solid defense," Tom said as we sat in his office, papers spread out in front of us. "Leo's a professional. This isn't his first rodeo. He's going to use everything he can to create doubt, but the documents you have, the trust, the paperwork you set up for Sarah, they're solid. But we need to make sure he doesn't get a foothold. If we let him chip away at her confidence, he'll keep trying." "I know," I replied, my voice low. "I just don't understand how someone could be so manipulative. He doesn't care about her at all." Tom leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing with a hint of understanding. "He's a predator. The thing is, predators don't stop until they've drained their prey completely. And right now, that prey is Sarah." I clenched my jaw, the words hitting me harder than I expected. "Then we make sure he doesn't get anywhere near her again. We'll hit him with everything we've got," Tom said firmly. "We'll file the proper motions and counteract his lawyer's claims. This is about getting Leo out of Sarah's life for good." The legal battle dragged on, and every day felt like a constant uphill climb. Leo's lawyer was persistent, constantly trying to stir up trouble, claiming that the trust documents were invalid, or that I had somehow manipulated Sarah into making decisions against her will. But every time they tried to twist the truth, we had an answer, a fact, a document, a piece of evidence that proved their accusations wrong. One day, Sarah and I sat down together to go over the latest motions filed by Leo's attorney. She was visibly drained, the stress taking its toll on her, but I could see the fire in her eyes. She was no longer the vulnerable woman who had been swept up in Leo's lies. She was stronger now, more determined to take control of her life. "Dad, what if they somehow win?" she asked, her voice small but filled with uncertainty. "What if he gets the apartment or some of the money?" "We're not going to let that happen," I said, my voice calm but firm. "Tom and I have prepared for every possibility. This is a fight we're going to win, Sarah. You've been through enough already, and I'm not going to let him take any more from you. I want to move on," she said, rubbing her temples. "I want to put all of this behind me. Why does it have to be so complicated?" I placed a reassuring hand on hers. "I know, sweetheart. I know. But sometimes we have to go through the hard stuff to make sure the future is worth it. This is just one chapter. And when it's over, you'll be free." Sarah sighed and nodded. "I know. I just wish it was easier." "I wish that too," I said softly. "But we'll get through it together. You've already done the hardest part, you've seen the truth, and you've chosen to protect yourself. The rest is just paperwork." And so we pressed on. Each day, we fought back against Leo's attempts to pull us back into his manipulative game. With every victory in court, Sarah began to feel the weight of her past lifting off her shoulders, bit by bit. It wasn't an easy journey, but it was a necessary one. A month later, we received the final verdict. The court ruled in our favor, rejecting Leo's claims and affirming the validity of the trust documents. The apartment was safe, and more importantly, Sarah was free from Leo's grasp. It was a hard-won victory, but it was one that marked the beginning of a new chapter for Sarah. She called me after the verdict was announced. I could hear the relief in her voice as she said, "Dad, we won. It's finally over." I smiled, the pride I felt for her overwhelming. "We won, sweetheart. And now you can move forward." "I don't know where to start," she admitted. "But I'm ready. I'm really ready." "I'm here, Sarah," I said, my voice filled with emotion. "You're not alone in this. We've got the rest of your life ahead of you." With the court ruling behind us, Sarah and I took the first steps into a new, uncertain chapter. The air felt lighter around us, the burden of Leo's manipulation finally lifting. Yet even though the legal battle was over, there were still moments of silence, moments where I could see the toll it had taken on Sarah, both physically and emotionally. The first week after the ruling, Sarah moved back into her own apartment, reclaiming the space she had been forced to leave when Leo had entered her life. It felt like a symbolic victory, a quiet reclaiming of her independence. But even with the apartment back, the road to emotional recovery was going to be long. I had seen her grow stronger, but I knew the scars would take time to heal. She was still my little girl, despite everything that had happened. One evening, I dropped by to visit her. I knocked on the door, a little hesitant, not sure if she was ready for a visit just yet. But when she opened the door, I saw the smile on her face, the first real one I had seen in months. "Hey, Dad," she said, stepping aside. "Come on in. I was just about to order takeout." "I'm not here for takeout," I said with a grin, following her inside. "I'm here for a little celebration. You've done it, Sarah. You got through this." She blushed slightly, still a bit shy despite the obvious strength in her voice. "I don't feel like celebrating yet, Dad. But I guess I'm starting to feel like myself again. It's just hard to forget all the stuff that happened." "I understand," I said, sitting down on the couch across from her. "It's going to take time, but you're on your way. You're stronger than you realize." She took a deep breath and sat down beside me. "I keep thinking about all the years I wasted with him. All the things I gave up. The apartment, my independence. I just wish I had seen through him sooner." "You can't change the past, sweetheart," I said gently. "You can only change what comes next. And from here on out, you're in control. You've got your life back, Sarah." She nodded, but I could see that doubt still lingered in her eyes. It wasn't easy for her to let go of the past. After everything she had invested emotionally in Leo, it wasn't something that could be erased with a few kind words. But what if I fall for someone like him again? She asked, her voice small. What if I can't see the signs? You've learned a lot about yourself, I said, my voice firm. You know what it feels like to be manipulated, and that's something you'll never forget. Trust yourself, Sarah. Trust your instincts. They'll never let you down. She smiled faintly, her eyes brighter than they had been in weeks. I think I'm starting to trust myself again. Over the next few months, Sarah continued to rebuild. She threw herself into her work even more, pouring her energy into projects that gave her a sense of purpose. I watched her grow more confident in herself, little by little, with each passing day. She began to take weekend trips on her own, something she hadn't done in years. She was reconnecting with old friends and starting to take control of the life she had once put on hold. One evening, she invited me to dinner at her apartment. She had made an effort to redecorate, giving the place a fresh new look that reflected her newfound independence. There were still signs of the past, old photos of her and Leo, remnants of the life they had shared, but it was clear to me that she was trying to leave it behind. I wanted you to see the place, Dad, she said, leading me into the living room. I've been working on it, trying to make it feel like me again. I love what you've done with it, I said, admiring the way she had chosen bright, airy colors for the walls, adding plants and photos that represented the life she was building on her own. I'm not there yet, she said quietly, sitting down beside me. I still have a lot to work through. But I'm getting there. You're doing great, sweetheart, I said, my heart swelling with pride. It's not about being perfect. It's about moving forward, one step at a time. You've already taken the hardest step. She looked at me with gratitude in her eyes. Thanks, Dad. You've been there for me through all of this. I don't know what I would have done without you. You don't have to thank me, I said, smiling. You've done all the hard work. I'm just here to support you. I know, she said, her voice steady. I've learned so much, not just about Leo, but about myself. I've learned that I'm stronger than I thought. And I'm starting to see that I deserve better than what I settled for. A few months later, Sarah decided to take a trip to a small beach town along the Pacific coast. She had always dreamed of visiting, but Leo had always talked her out of it. Now it was her time. She went alone, determined to spend the week focusing on herself, on rediscovering what made her happy, without the weight of anyone else's expectations. When she returned, I could tell something had changed. She was glowing, a lightness to her that I hadn't seen in months. She told me about the places she visited, the people she met, and the peace she had found in the solitude of the ocean breeze and the quiet mornings by the sea. I think I found something out there, Dad, she said, her voice full of wonder. Not just the ocean, or the town, but something inside me. I think I finally let go of him. I can breathe again. That's amazing, sweetheart, I said, my heart soaring with relief. You deserve to feel free. You deserve peace. I do, she agreed, smiling for the first time in a long while. I really do. The years that followed were filled with healing and growth. Sarah built her career, created new friendships, and eventually began dating again. This time, though, she was cautious, taking things slow and trusting herself every step of the way. She had learned the hard way what it meant to trust someone, but now she knew the importance of trusting her instincts. She and I remained as close as ever, sharing milestones and quiet moments. The apartment was hers again, and though it was just a building, it was symbolic of her recovery. She had taken back her life, piece by piece, and I had no doubt that the woman she had become was someone she could be proud of. As I sat on the porch of my house one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I reflected on everything we had been through. We had fought hard to break free of Leo's control, and though it had been a long, difficult journey, I knew we had both emerged stronger on the other side. And I knew, without a doubt, that the future held nothing but possibilities for Sarah. No more manipulative men, no more broken dreams. Just a fresh start, a chance for her to truly live on her own terms. It had been a few years since the final court ruling. The tension, the heartbreak, the relentless worry, it all seemed like a distant memory now. As I watched Sarah from across the room, chatting with her friends, laughing freely, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in a long time. The girl who had once been manipulated and controlled by Leo was now an independent, confident woman, someone who had found her voice, her strength, and most importantly, her happiness. We had both come so far since that dark time in our lives. She had reclaimed her future, and I had been there every step of the way. But now, I realized something profound. I had learned just as much as she had through this whole ordeal. Before everything happened with Leo, I had always prided myself on being the protector, the one who always had all the answers. But this experience taught me that sometimes, even the ones we protect need to learn on their own, and we have to trust them to find their way. I had been a father trying to fix everything, but I hadn't realized that my daughter needed space to grow, to make her own decisions, and to rebuild. I watched as she caught my eye from across the room, and I saw her smile. She had grown into a woman who knew her worth. She wasn't defined by the mistakes of her past, she was defined by her resilience, her ability to stand back up after being knocked down. The phone call from Leo, the endless threats and legal battles, it was all behind us now. And despite how painful it had been to watch my daughter fall victim to someone like him, I was thankful for the lessons it had taught us both. She had become stronger, and I had learned how to let go, how to trust her. Sarah walked over to me, her eyes sparkling. "Hey, Dad, I was thinking, what about a vacation? Just the two of us, like we used to. I know it's been a while, but I think it's time for a fresh start. A new chapter for both of us." I smiled, my heart swelling with pride. "I'd love that, sweetheart. Just the two of us. It's been a long time since we did something like that." As we talked about potential trips, I realized how far we had come. A few years ago, I had feared for Sarah's future. Now I knew she was on a path where she could build whatever she wanted. She had everything she needed: strength, self-awareness, and the unshakable knowledge that she could protect herself. And now, I wasn't there to fix things for her anymore. I was just there to support her in whatever came next. She was ready for anything. The life I had imagined for her, one where she would be protected from harm, one where she would always have a safety net, had morphed into something I could never have expected. It was no longer about keeping her safe from the world. It was about watching her step out into that world, knowing she could handle it. "I've learned a lot, Dad," Sarah said as we continued to plan the trip. "Not just about relationships or trust, but about me. About how I see myself. I know now what it feels like to be truly free. I never want to lose that." I couldn't have been prouder. "You've come so far, Sarah. And you're going to keep moving forward. Whatever happens, I'll be here. You don't need me to fix things anymore. You've got this." She smiled softly, then turned her attention back to the details of our trip. I watched her, feeling a quiet peace settle over me. This wasn't just a new chapter in her life. It was a new chapter in mine as well. A chapter where I wasn't always trying to protect her, but where we could both enjoy the rewards of the struggles we had faced. The future looked bright. Sarah's journey wasn't over, but it was just beginning. And as for me? I knew my role now. I wasn't here to protect her from everything. I was here to watch her flourish, to cheer her on, and to be there when she needed me, not as someone who would fix her life, but as someone who would support her as she built it on her own. Epilogue. Looking forward. As Sarah and I sat together on that vacation, overlooking the ocean at sunset, I realized that the true victory wasn't in the courtrooms or the documents we had fought so hard to protect. It was in the person Sarah had become. The person she had chosen to be, no longer defined by the lies and manipulations of others, but by her own strength. I had watched her grow, and in the process, I had learned to let go. To trust her. To watch her walk into the world, not as someone in need of saving, but as someone ready to embrace it. And in that moment, with the sound of the waves crashing in the background and the promise of the future before us, I knew that no matter what came next, we would be okay. She would be okay,